Look at my new hoodie that's got Irlen Warrior on it.
Where does it? Oh yeah, Irlen Syndrome Warrior. It's not for the weak. Is that you, Hannah? You're not the one of the week, are you?
No.
Where are we today? Let's have a look. Let's have a look. We're in a church.
We are at Hebron Church, Cogan.
We're waiting for the crowds to arrive, aren't we?
We're waiting for Alan to come.
Yeah.
And everyone else.
You did a talk in the House of Commons. Is that right? Yeah, that's impressive. With all the ministers in a...
Yeah, all the MPs turned up for that.
That's amazing. What does Max think of that? She did a talk in the House of Commons, Max.
I know. I was there.
You were there?
Yeah, I was there. But the thing is, I'm going to get some early respect because I get some early respect. I can see. If I get early, I can see that wonderful.
It's nerve-wracking when you stand up here, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Got your microphone. This is the view Hannah gets of the world. Are they rose tinted?
There's a mix of colours in there.
What's the colours? I can actually see, Hannah, what you're seeing.
I've got a message on if you don't want.
What are we waiting for, Han?
Alan Penn.
Alan Penn. Alan Penn.
I look forward to hearing how things have changed. So, would you like to welcome Hannah to the show?
Welcome. My name is Hannah and I'm local from this area, and I went to Fairfield Primary School when I was younger, and then I went up to St Cyrus in year 7. At both schools I did struggle a lot. I'm an earning ambassador for the condition that I've been since 2015, that I enjoy raising awareness for, because it's the best thing to be able to help other people. Since trying my own spectral filters, they have helped me so much and life-changing that I wish I had them when I was in school, as I completed my HND in agriculture back in, I graduated back in October. I'm able to focus without blinking a lot. I'm able to talk to someone without looking away, as that was trouble I had before, and I would get headaches and then would be very sensitive, and my depth perception wouldn't be very good. And having Irlen filters has changed my life so much, that I'm so glad I went that step. Thank you for listening about my experience with Irlen. Now I'd like to welcome Alan Penn, that will talk about Irlen.
Wow, had a lot of fun with that. Usually when I talk to people about Irlen, I have slides set and I go on for hours and talk about this and talk about that. I didn't know what I was coming into today. You look a friendly lot. So what I decided to do is just talk generally about Irlen. Okay? The most important bit is you're probably from different situations. Some may be teachers and some may be parents, and you all want to know something different. So what's really important is that I'll tell you just a quick bit about everything, and then whatever's in your head you want to know, fire it back at me. I find it a lot easier to talk if someone asks me a question. Okay? But there is a problem. I always say if I got paid by the word, I'll be a millionaire. Alright? So if I talk too much and I'm running over time, make sure you stop me. Okay? Now I think we do have an Irlen screener in the room. Is this you?
Informally.
Informally, okay.
On turn, it's through Harry Wilkinson, the Institute of
Okay. But what we've got is you've got some people then that have an appreciation of this. Does anyone else know anything about Irlen that they could say, yeah, gosh. Okay, you've seen it before, haven't you? Yeah. Okay, and so
Some people won't know what Irlen is, in terms of the great calendar things.
Yeah.
It might be helpful to explain that.
is perfect. That's always where I start. Okay, so at least I'll assume you all know nothing. Okay, so Helen is based in California, in Long Beach, California. It's a really nice place. Lovely to go there and visit her. Her background, she's a therapist, a counsellor. She's a learning needs specialist. Over the years, she's enhanced her qualifications, so she does more counselling. So she counsels families. She's got military training, all sorts. She's got a wide variety of background in helping people. But she was working in a university in California, and she was running a program to help some adults that really couldn't read. And no matter what she did, she was struggling. She couldn't progress them in any way. So she approached the US government, and they gave her a grant, and she set upon a 3-year program to look into why it is that no matter all the standard strategies you take, you couldn't get these adults to read. So then over 3 years, she discovered that some people saw some really weird stuff on the page. But actually when they saw some really weird stuff, there was some really weird stuff happening to them. Their eyes were freaking out, they were getting headaches, they were complaining about all sorts of physical symptoms, some would have behavioural issues. And she started to establish a link between what people saw on the page and how they felt. And she was talking to these individuals about their experiences, and they were saying, no one's ever asked me these questions before, you know? So I look at the page and I just see what I see. That's normally what I see. No one said, does it look this way, does it look that way? How do you feel when you read? So she then made the link between the physical symptoms and the reading problems and the visual symptoms, bolted it all together, and then the big breakthrough was that she realised that some people performed differently and they felt differently and saw things differently when the page background wasn't white. So that took her on a journey of discovery, and she realised that some people were sensitive to the high contrast black and white. And then she discovered further that it wasn't just on the page, that actually some people had a problem just with the lighting environment. And the page was the extra push over the edge. So at the end of these 3 years, she came up with a mechanism to identify the problem, to grade the problem, and to work out what colour a person could use to cover the page, to change that background away from white, to make them see better and feel better. In addition to that, she then discovered that because some people have a problem with the lighting in just the environment, as well as the page, an even better solution was to put a colour filter in glasses or contact lenses. And when you got that filter applied over your eyes, it basically was for all of life, because she discovered that, you know, you look at the page, that's a problem, but the minute you look away from the page, you still have a problem. So that was almost like the ultimate solution. So she applied, she had patents for the process and the product, and in 1983 she stepped up to the world and said, I've discovered this. So Helen then brought this over to the UK. She trained one person in 1985, it came over to the UK, and that person then established some regional centres. So you think, you know, Wales, Scotland, North East, North West, London, that sort of thing. And these are called, these regional centres are run by clinic directors, and basically they're like almost like the top Irlen people. And I'm one of these clinic directors. I come into the fold a little bit later. So 85, these centres in England and Wales were established, and the idea is that you then have a network of screeners that will go out and do the first line identifying people with Irlen, and I'll go on to about what causes it and all that later in the testing process. We have some screeners that work out how you Irlen, what colour works across the page, and then we have the lens people that can, you know, work out what colour you need over the eyes, and there, as Hannah says, is the diagnosticians, and you have these clinic directors that can train and set up the whole framework. And clinic directors could do the whole lot. So it's a bit like, I'm a director, I can screen, I do lenses, but I can train other lens people and also train screeners. And screeners typically the people that are right on the shop floor. They're out with people, they're in the schools, they're in the colleges, you know, and they're seeing the people that are having problems. So, Helen brought this over, the training centres. Now, I came into when was it, 2008, maybe 2000, something like that. And I came from a very different background. Normally, most of our Irlen people are therapists, special needs teachers, maybe counsellors, something along the lines of Helen's background. I came from a technical background, and my specialism was actually light and fibre optics. I was a businessman, I ran a big fibre optics company. I became very ill and lost everything. I discovered that my 4 children had Irlen during this process. I then just got to 40 years old and discovered I had this. But I was a high achiever. I could read. I could do well. So my Irlen big profile, and a lot of people that you think of having Irlen, they seem to have text moving and fuzzy text and all the things that we see on the screen, and they can't read, they're really struggling. That wasn't the case for me. And what I'll do in a minute, I'm going to tell you about the sort of people that have Irlen and what I can present differently in different people. And that's actually, for what we call a bad phrase, an eye-opener. We're putting Helen Irlen's test in a lot of the US Marines that came back from Afghanistan and Iraq and head injuries. So they've come back with a lot of stress, a lot of head injuries, and the results of that are light sensitivity they've got chronic migraines, and within a couple of hours, on goes the final rock filter car, and they're sitting there, pain-free. Well, I think we've tinted about 1,600, 1,700 now, and it's part of the new research project that we're doing out there. So, and that actually was almost an extension of what I talked about. When we think about Irlen, most people go, yeah, it's about kiddies and reading. Yeah, it is, but that's a part of it, because that's how it really impacts them. Okay? But we can have also those kiddies that are struggling to read, and they will struggle at some point to read well or read efficiently for long periods of time. Okay? The reading will be compromised at some stage because the visual part of the brain is inefficient. So you'll always see it in someone's reading when it's an adult or a child at some point. But if you're young in your learning years and words go like that, you're going to really struggle to pick up your reading. So we've got the reading part, but actually you're finding that these kiddies can't concentrate. They're sitting there fidgeting. They're rolling around in their chair. You give them the instruction, and it's like the words are going in one ear and out the other, because their brain's off, it's gone. They're not severe enough to be thought of as having attention deficit or being hyperactive. They're just not quite with you. And after we filter people, we neutralise them. So, what I have to do, my challenge is to be able to go out to schools and to professionals, educate them on the symptoms, and also make sure that I have enough people trained to actually see the people and do a good job screening them, and then an even better job when we filter them. At the moment, it's the Irlen, a lot of the Irlen assessments, unless you're Irlen assessed at a school or a college, it's as part of your job, then obviously a lot of the time that's free, but then most of the Irlen centres and people are independent, and it's a private service. And my crusade at the moment is to try and make Irlen correction and Irlen work more accessible and more affordable, so that we can bring it to the people that really need it. Okay. I did warn you about talking, didn't I? So, someone asked me a question because there's something I must have said, must have prompted something. Like, I don't think I would have covered everything.
Do you think it's hereditary?
Yeah, without doubt.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If I took 1,000, this is what I mean about questions, I can answer it straight away. If I took 1,000 of my children's files out of the cabinet, I would probably say there's only a handful that either mum or dad don't have Irlen. When I find that mum and dad, even on screening forms, if there's a position for mum or dad's preferred colour, and the more severe the child, the chances are that it's come from both sides of the
Can
family.
be passed on?
Yeah, most definitely, yeah. I mean, my mother has Irlen, I have it, my 4 children have it. Not that I'm not the model for everything that happens, but I see it day in, day out. It's even part of our screening protocol that when the parent comes along, we try to establish the link. So we have 2 things, it's either inherited, or it's what we call acquired. Now the acquired part is less obvious, and that means that at some point there's been some brain trauma in some way, be that concussion, whiplash, a medical trauma in some way. So sometimes we could have stroke, or we could have something like meningitis or something that compromises the brain in some way, so the signalling gets knocked out. Now the only thing I can tell you about the technical part of Irlen is that between the back of the eyes and the visual cortex, some colours, some people are sensitive to colours, which just changes the timing of these things. And there's many things which are going to change the signalling in the brain. So the way to think about this is the more compromised or more bothered the brain is, the more higher likelihood it is that it will raise the Irlen symptoms. So we have someone who's struggled, there's Irlen in the family, they know that maybe the symptoms only come on after, say, half an hour reading. But then they have some sort of compromise in some way, they fall off the chair, they've ended up in hospital because they knock themselves out, and suddenly before you know it, they've gone massively light sensitive, and the reading is severely reduced. So yeah, it's massively hereditary, but there's going to be an acquired component as well. And that's throughout the screening process we try to understand where this has come from.
Can I ask, are we finishing at 1:30?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Because I wanted, if possible, to ask Hannah 1 or 2 questions as well.
Yeah.
If that's possible.
John, come on.
Hannah, thank you so much for today. Hannah said she was an ambassador. And obviously, Alan, you are an absolutely wonderful crusader. Crusaders are slightly different to ambassadors, but nevertheless, Hannah, you did say that in 2015 you became an ambassador.
Yeah.
And I could tell by your body language at that time how happy you are being an ambassador. You're alongside some great rugby players who are ambassadors for banks and things like that, but you're an ambassador for Irlen. Can I ask you, in your work as an ambassador, are there any particular moments of time when you have felt really happy about what you're doing? For example, have you been to any parliaments and things like that?
Yeah, I've been to the Royal Assembly and Westminster to do like a speech to, up in Parliament we did my speech up to the MPs, just popped in and just raising awareness to anyone that wants to hear about women. They were very interested.
Can I add to that?
Yes, that is what
I was going to say, can I add to that it's because of the work that was done by, Hannah and someone else, Jennifer, who approached the sort of badgered some of the politicians, that meant that it set up a chain of events, which meant that I could come back and talk more in depth. And it was very interesting this morning that, this then kicks off, when you can get people on the same page and you just want to help people, the awareness work that Hannah's done, anecdotally says, look, this is what it's done for me. It works, it helps. And then when you get the eyes and ears of someone, what you want to do is get the eyes and ears of someone who can make things happen. Okay, the process is slow.
Yeah.
So the nearest centre that you can be tested, and secondly, how much does it cost?
Okay, at the moment, the nearest, so I go out and travel, so I can visit people at home and school and uni, that sort of stuff. The nearest fixed base centre is, there's one at Wrexham University, there's another one in Cheltenham, that's the nearest centre.
So I've got children who've got diagnosis of visual dyslexia and visual stress, and they've never mentioned this Googling to me. So
And then this,
they get diagnosis elsewhere.
and what has actually happened was I've got to put our hands up, our marketing part of Irlen was really bad. So in actual fact, the visual stress bit is Irlen. That's what it is.
And it's just never.
Yeah, the visual stress part is Irlen. And it's always been Irlen syndrome.
This afternoon, really appreciate you being here and perhaps just raising that awareness. If you've got any further questions, you can stay. That would be lovely. There's going to be coffee and cake. Also, there's leaflets.
Dyslexia. You take the testing on a brain that's misfiring and busy. So places quite often don't always test come around and go, yeah, you're right, you have got a problem. It's the foundation to the problem. So we normally say, get the screening part done for Irlen. If it's there, neutralise it, then it allows the other tests and therapies, because I do a lot of work in